there's an art to crafting good controllers, and these designs missed the mark.
I retire this in glory.
Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 worst video game controllers. For this list, we'll be scouring gaming history for the most atrocious and low-quality controllers known to the public, with a particular emphasis on controllers that are universally panned.
What the heck is going on here?
We aren't including knockoff budget versions of official controllers. Our focus is on unique controllers that had interesting ideas, but fell short of their promise.
Super Scope 6, only for Super Nintendo. Now you're playing with power, superpower.
Number 10, the Duke Xbox controller.
The design here was driven by spending time with gamers.
Sometimes it takes a few tries to get things right, a concept Microsoft knows all too well. When the original Xbox console launched in November 2001, it came packaged with a proprietary controller known for one key quality: its size.
The back says Xbox Game Controller, but it should say Fat Xbox Game Controller.
The controller's sheer bulkiness earned it criticism, as well as the nicknames Fatty and Duke.
That was one of the big pieces of feedback.
Over time, the Duke controller was phased out in favor of the smaller controller S, a decision we imagine was greeted with praise. Number 9, Alphagrip AG5 controller.
Now let me show you how it works.
Computer controllers certainly have their place, but this is far from ideal. I mean, just look at this thing. Developed by the company Alphagrip Incorporated, the AG5 is a handheld keyboard built in the shape of a controller. In theory, this device would be optimal for both gameplay and typing. In practice, however, the device is party to a steep learning curve and lacks the precise controls best suited for fast-paced games.
And it looks quite posh on your desk as well.
From an awkward layout of keys to a noticeable in-game slowness, there's no shortage of issues with the AG5.
And the genius thing about this is when you're holding it like this, you're using the mouse, it's the trackball as a mouse, and you can access all these and access these as well with your thumbs.
Number 8, Rollin' Rocker.
This thing is the biggest shit biscuit I've ever seen.
When people say they want to rock and roll, this isn't what they had in mind. The Rollin' Rocker was built as an accessory for the Nintendo Entertainment System, the idea being that players would tilt on the device in order to control in-game movement.
You'd stand on it, go left and right, forward and up, and that's basically it.
While an innovative idea, the device came under flack for failing to work properly with NES titles and for having a tendency to malfunction. Facing criticism and even an alleged lawsuit, the device's creator, LJN Toys, promptly discontinued its production.
Each game responds differently, but none of them work. Adventure Island keeps walking right, Excite Bike keeps going down, Skate or Die goes in circles.
Number 7, U-Force.
Honestly, you could get more responsive reaction by putting the controller cord in your mouth and trying to chew your way through a game.
Speaking of the NES, there were many peripherals to be associated with the famed console. One of the most infamous devices was the U-Force, a specially made controller by Broderbund.
U-Force. Nothing but you, and the game.
Its gimmick was the use of infrared sensors to detect hand movements, which would then translate into controller commands.
I actually succeeded in finishing level 1-1 by some miracle, thus proving the justice of our culture or something. 1-2 kicked my ass though.
All well and good, except that the U-Force was found to be imprecise in its reading of hand motions, to the point of not functioning at all with certain games. Such a shame.
U-Force. For Nintendo.
Number 6, the Sega Activator.
You got nice shorts, Rod.
Praise the almighty Octagon, is what one might say if this darn thing worked.
There we go.
Built for the Sega Genesis, the Activator controller was as creatively ambitious as it was visually fascinating. An 8-sided device which sat on the floor, it fired infrared beams that would theoretically interpret the player's kicks as in-game actions. Pitched as a viable substitute for a traditional control pad, the Activator was instead criticized for its inaccurate motion sensor technology and its tendency to make games unnecessarily difficult. Not to mention, it really makes you look like an idiot.
How about it? You gonna walk up? Here, I got you. Uh-oh, I'm cut.
Number 5, the Philips CDI controller.
Trust me, babe, I know about this CDI stuff.
Though Philips's proprietary console didn't lack for questionable controllers, the one that came standard with the system just boggles the mind.
It's all worth it just to play such classics as Sticky Bear Reading, Lamb Chops Play-Alongs.
Designed more like a remote with its infrared input, this particular peripheral had a simple interface with a number of buttons and an awkward directional pad.
Trying to play the games with this is a bad idea.
Unfortunately, the controller's overall awkward shape made it uncomfortable to use, earning it a lot of criticism over the years. Given that the production of the CDI was discontinued in 1998, we assume that this controller died with it.
Ugh. It's horrible.
Number 4. The Atari Jaguar controller.
You want to play?
Yeah.
Complexity does not always equate to success. Take the controller for the Atari Jaguar, which was notable for using a 12-button keypad and 3 action buttons.
A 17-button game controller in your hand.
Yeah.
What Atari didn't count on was the general public calling the Jaguar controller overly complicated and shoddily designed, with much of the negativity aimed at the central keypad.
The button placements is actually the real complaint here.
A redesigned controller with 6 action buttons, called the Pro Controller, was eventually released. But by that point, the damage had been done.
Ooh, the math, Bob. You'll remember that, won't you, Bob?
Yeah, I'll remember.
Number 3. Connect.
I'd like to show you something that my family and friends think is absolutely amazing.
If motion control is the dream of game designers, this is another stumble on the road to success. Originally released in 2010 for the Xbox 360, the Kinect promised gamers a full motion-controlled gameplay experience.
She sets it up!
You simply had to stand in front of your device's camera and use your hands to perform on-screen tasks. However, despite early enthusiasm, the Kinect's poor implementation of games and spotty motion tracking ensured its legacy would be one of failure.
Xbox, play music. All right, so now I can listen to Justin Bieber.
Number 2. Atari 5200 controller.
The non-self-centering, analog joystick button-breaking piece of junk.
Oh, Atari, you had such good intentions. With the release of the 5200 console in 1982, Atari touted an analog joystick with more control than that of the 2600 console.
With a controller so advanced it plays arcade.
Sadly, the joystick-based controller Atari packed with the 5200 didn't quite raise the bar. Instead, it fell victim to the limitations of its design, from a stick that didn't center to keypad buttons made from weak material.
This is the reason the system failed.
This, as you can imagine, caused many of them to break down altogether and become fully useless. By 1984, the 5200 and its various peripherals were all discontinued.
This summer, the really hot video games come from Atari.
Before we unveil our top pick, here are a few honorable mentions.
And depending on the game, you would either use the keypad or this disc, or both.
You put it on, look through the crosshairs at the picture, and give it a voice command. Fire!
The trackball itself is somewhat small, and when you play Centipede, you don't get the feeling that it's a real arcade.
Introducing Super Scope 6. Remote-powered and laser-accurate.
Number 1. Power Glove.
Power Glove. Everything else is child's play.
As the saying goes,
I love the Power Glove. It's so bad.
Made famous by the 1989 film The Wizard, Mattel's glove-shaped peripheral for the NES caught everyone's attention, with its combined controller keypad interface and the promise of hand motions to control on-screen characters. Unfortunately, the glove soon got attention for different reasons. It was found to be difficult to use, with imprecise controls and lacking information on how to interpret the keypad.
You're going to need to know what the program codes are. Yes, that's right. You have to put in a different code for each game that you play.
In the end, the glove sold less than 100,000 units, viewed as a loss and proving its inability to engage.
Yeah, well, just keep your Power Gloves off her, pal, huh?
Do you agree with our list?
Not bad for a novice.
What's your least favorite video game controller? For more well-designed top 10s published every day, be sure to subscribe to WatchMojo.com.
That button is your future. Go ahead, press it.